Penguin Random House Audio presents His Perfect Wife by Natasha Bell, read for you by Katharine Mcewan. Thursday, February 21st, 2013. The Beginning. Marc sat on the bottom stair and tried not to think the worst. The voice continued. "The vast majority of people return safe and well within the first 48 hours, Mr. Southwood. There's no need to panic." There was a pause. Marc knew he should take comfort from this. Sit tight and wait for his wife to return with a perfectly reasonable explanation. The officer said good night, and the line clicked dead, as if that had solved the problem, as if Marc should have felt better. 6 hours down, 42 to go. I wish I could put myself there with him. I'd wrap first my arms and then my legs around his body, cling to him until we lost our balance and tumbled to the hallway floor. Tell him with my touch the one thing he needed to know that night. I'm here. Right here. He stood up and replaced the receiver, severing his fingertip connection to the phone call and his one active plan to do something. The hairs on his arms stood on end as he shivered to a silent beat of, "Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong." Perhaps he shouldn't have phoned the police. After all, I was a grown woman. Perhaps it was over the top to report me missing. It's not as if I had a curfew. But I was a mother. My children were home and I was not. It's so unlike her. Marc had said that to the officer a moment ago. It had felt like a whine, that childish word laughably impotent in the face of explaining the absolute abnormality of a woman who had always come home, day after day, year after year, not walking through our front door that night. I was meant to have returned by the time he brought the girls back from swimming. We should have ordered a takeaway. We should have sat with our chow mein, chattering about open days and council cuts. He tried my phone again. Off as usual. "My little Luddite," he'd called me, when he asked if I wanted an iPhone for my birthday, and I said I was perfectly happy with the 2-year-old handset I had. It made calls and showed me my emails. What more did I want? He should have pestered me more. Another man would have given me one anyway, synced our calendars and address books, downloaded an app to keep tabs on me, made sure I couldn't get lost. "It's Thursday, for God's sake," Marc said aloud. He paced to the window to peer onto the street again. I wouldn't miss Thursday takeaway without a reason. He raised his hand, scratched his left temple. He'd tried to explain to the officer. Was Jones his name? Officer Jones thought we'd had a fight. People disappeared all the time. I didn't, though. I'd spent the day at work. Marc had rung my colleague Paula to check. She said we'd walked out of the building together. I'd wished her a good weekend because she had Friday off to attend some family wedding. She'd told me she'd try, though she hated the things, and we'd parted with a wave. Whole hours had elapsed since that exchange. It was now 11 p.m. It was dark. Such things bothered my husband. It didn't matter that I'd lived alone in cities before we met. It didn't matter that I'd spent more than a year wandering the streets of Chicago, an optimistic student wearing an armor of Pabst Best against the gangs and gun crime statistics. It didn't matter that I'd once parachuted from a plane, that I'd accidentally hit a black slope the first time I strapped skis to my feet, that I'd backpacked around India and spent a month living in a roach-infested squat in Alphabet City. My husband saw me as something fragile. He walked me home and met me from trains. He wanted to protect me. Should he search the streets? Was that what one was supposed to do? Maybe he could ask a neighbor to watch the girls. But where would he go? Did people normally look in pubs and bars? Marc clung to the idea that we were normal that night. We'd never aspired to be normal before. We'd felt unique, special. But abnormal things didn't happen to normal people, so we were normal that night. And in keeping with normality, where everyday anxieties outweigh even the most horrendous fears, my husband continued to care how others perceived us. Behind his concern for me bubbled a multitude of mundane worries. Had Officer Jones thought him daft? Had Paula decided he was overbearing? Had he made a fool of himself? I wouldn't be lounging in a bar, of course. I didn't even drink. Bus shelters, restaurants, late-night libraries. This was York in real life, not London in some dramatic episode of Spooks we were watching on a box set binge. This was a picturesque tourist city, where the most the police usually had to deal with was fishing stolen bikes out of polluted rivers. Besides, the races had been on, and I abhorred town when the cobbled streets and listed bars filled with stumbling gamblers in their glad rags. He walked into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. Al would laugh, he thought, if she were here. I'd have been more likely to roll my eyes or stick my hands on my hips and give him that "seriously?" look. But maybe that's me being defensive. Under different circumstances, maybe I would have been amused by my unfailingly British husband. I suppose it's hard to tell from here. At least Charlotte and Lizzie slept. He'd told them I had to work late. He hated lying to them, I know, but what could he have told a 7- and a 10-year-old? I don't know where Mummy is, girls, and I'm trying not to imagine her dead in a ditch, so eat your noodles, and we'll find a bedtime story. I wasn't dead in a ditch. He couldn't think like that. Those things didn't happen. Not here. Not to us. There would be a perfectly rational explanation for my absence, and we'd both laugh about it tomorrow. I'd shriek, he thought, when I found out he'd called the police. It'd get peddled out at dinner parties, the time he lost his head because I fell asleep on a friend's sofa. Our guests would hoot with laughter, and he'd blush good-naturedly, happy as ever to play the bashful fool to my leading lady. I can still picture a future that looks like that. But it wrung our friends. Patrick first, of course. They'd known each other since university, and Marc always turned to him for advice. His wife Susan picked up, though. Patrick was out. He tried Fran and Ollie, the other staples of our little gang of dinner-party couples. Patrick had introduced us all years ago, when he and Fran worked in the same surgery, before Fran sold out and accepted a job in a private clinic. We saw these friends every week, went on holidays with them, looked after their kids when they needed help. They were our York family. Marc also tried my old school friend Philippa, then some of the numbers on the PTA phone tree. Nobody had seen me since our Valentine's party. Fabulous night. Tell Alex I loved her costume. Of course, Susan, as soon as I determine she has a pulse, that'll be the first thing out of my mouth. It wasn't Susan's fault. He shouldn't have snapped. But trust her to play the optimist, to utterly downplay even the most ridiculous of dramas. He made a note to apologize once this was over. Over. Despite his panic, he was still thinking in terms of resolution. The very worst things in life, our most fearful nightmares, they don't happen all at once. They creep up, lodge themselves gradually in our brains, worming their way slowly in, so that once they become a reality, they are already somewhat familiar. If my husband could have known the extent of the horror still to come, he wouldn't have survived that night. As it was, he held hope like a pebble in his palm. The kettle finished boiling, but he no longer wanted tea. He wanted his wife to come home and come to bed. He yawned. He'd had to get up early to finish grading. He hadn't been able to face it last night, and the girls had wanted to play board games. I remember I'd sulked.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?